So here we are, folks, preparing for the Super Bowl. Once again, Chiefs and Eagles, round two. Yes, I know. I didn't want to see it. You probably didn't want to see it. That's perfectly fine. But we have to talk about the two games that led up to this point, okay? I finally was able to get to it, and this is the episode to do it, all right? Chiefs and Bills, Commanders and Eagles. Art Rooney gives his thoughts on the vision of the Steelers. Okay, Mike McCarthy takes a break. Why haven't the Saints hired a new head coach yet? And the Reese's Senior Bowl recap. Okay, you might want to listen and stay tuned for that because you might hear some people that you may be interested in that you may want to watch their film and their highlights at. Okay, all of this and more on the 64th episode of the Football Junkies podcast, okay? I am your host with the most, okay? I am your chief bagrodamus when it comes to anything and everything related to the bag, okay? I am the man with the plan when it comes to anything and everything related to mock drafts, okay? When it relates to trades, rumors of trades, and more, okay? I'm the person that goes with the truth bombs, okay? Reality checks, gut check time, and more, okay? But guess what? I am all these things and more. But most importantly, I am your host, Kale. You already know how these things are about to go. So guess what? On three, 1, 2, 3, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's just get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the league right now. So, we are finally talking about the Chiefs and Bills game as well as the Commanders and Eagles game, okay? We are finally getting into it. Unfortunately, this is painful for Buffalo fans and Commanders fans, but it's okay because guess what? There is room for you on the Buffalo wing boat, okay? Because we got about maybe, 29 spaces left, I think. Is it 29? No, 29, 30, 31. Don't worry about that, okay? Okay? Just don't worry about that. But there's room for you on the Buffalo wing boat, okay? Better yet, I think that's going to be the episode, Buffalo wing boat. I actually like that. But let's get into this game, all right? So, Chiefs and Bills, okay? Josh Allen, 22 for 34, 237 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 7 yards per attempt, and a 64.7 completion percentage. James Cook, 13 attempts for 85 rushing yards, 6.5 rushing yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, and 1 rush of 10 plus yards or more. Mac Hollins, 4 targets for 3 receptions, 73 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 24.3 receiving yards per reception. Patrick Mahomes, 18 for 26, 245 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 9.4 yards per attempt, and a 69.2 completion percentage. Kareem Hunt, 17 attempts for 64 rushing yards, 3.8 rushing yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and 2 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Xavier Worthy, 7 targets for 6 receptions, 85 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 14.2 receiving yards per reception. Now, this is what I will say after finally being able to watch the game again. Once again, the Bills could have won this game. And I know Bills fans are probably saying, no, we couldn't. Yes, you guys could have. Once again, the lights got too bright for Josh Allen, and he folded. The first drive, he almost threw 2 interceptions. 2 interceptions, back to back. I understand that there's a lot of people, especially in the media, that, they may have their reservations for certain quarterbacks and they may have their reservations for, people like Lamar Jackson and whatnot. And that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with that. But we also need to have the same conversation for Josh Allen because he continues to crumble when he goes up against the Chiefs in the playoffs. And granted, I understand that playing in Kansas City in the AFC Championship is a lot of pressure on your shoulders. But bro, you cannot give them an inch of fear because I'm telling you, they're going to be like sharks in the water, okay? Once they smell blood, they're going in, okay? And that's exactly what they did. They put all the pressure on Josh Allen when it should have been the other way around. And granted, again, I understand it's a tall task to play at Arrowhead. I get it. But the fact of the matter is, you could have easily won this game had you guys not continued to make these dumb decisions. From trying to go 2-point conversion to running out of bounds instead of just staying in bounds so you can let the clock just go down. Multiple mistakes were made in this game that shouldn't have happened. Okay? Because at the end of the day, you need to put all the pressure on Patrick Mahomes. You need to give him the least amount of time to work with. Because if you don't, guess what's going to happen? Patrick Mahomes things. He's going to find Travis Kelce. They're going to connect on 2 big plays, and then the rest is history. And that's exactly what happened in this game. Even the last play of the game, you knew that Spags was going to probably do a 0 blitz. You knew that he was going to send everybody that he can towards you. You rolled out the wrong way because guess what? If you would have just looked to your left and you would have just thrown it to the running back, that's a first down. Because why? Nobody was over there. So again, we have to stop giving Josh Allen all of these get out of jail free cards when we don't do it for people like a Lamar Jackson, like a Jalen Hurts, or anybody else. Because if this was anybody else, everybody would be throwing them under the bus and saying, oh, he's a bum. You got to get rid of him. He's no good. All those crazy things and more. But because it's Josh Allen, we have to give him grace. We have to give him understanding. We have to show compassion with him. No, the fact of the matter is you folded. The only 2 quarterbacks that have been able to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs has been Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. Those are the only 2. That is not good, folks. And granted, I understand that the Chiefs are difficult. I understand that they are magicians. I understand craziest things when they need to make a play. I get all that. But come on, man. Come on. You have to do better. Everybody knows that when you are going up against the Chiefs, you have to control the clock. You have to make sure that you keep Patrick Mahomes out of rhythm. Because if you do that, you have a better chance at winning the game compared to trying to get, to the end zone as fast as you can. No, you don't want that. You want that team to be out of rhythm while at the same time leave the least amount of time that you can on the clock for them to work on. Because then guess what? That puts all the pressure on them. And that means all you have to do is just hold up for 3 plays. That's it. If you hold up for 3 plays, you won the game. But because, once again, you kept on trying to go for it on 2, you kept on trying to go and play a game that playing, and you're thinking that you're the Chiefs and you're trying to their competition, and you cannot do that. And I understand there are people that are probably saying, there's next year and, all those different things, but it's hard to get back to the AFC Championship. The AFC is a very loaded division, okay? Some of the best quarterbacks are in the AFC. It's hard to get back there. I don't know what's it going to take, but at this point, this is another instance of Josh Allen failing to win the big game. You cannot continue to do this. Even the last time that they was in the AFC Championship and they faced the Chiefs, you never do that, bro. That is a cardinal rule. You never do that. But it's not my team, so I don't really care. They'll be, riding on a buffalo wing boat somewhere in Cancun right now, drinking pina coladas and margaritas and whatever. But let's get into this Commanders and Eagles game, okay? So, Jaden Daniels, 29 for 48, 255 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 5.3 yards per attempt, and a 60.4 completion percentage. Jaden Daniels, again, 6 attempts for 48 rushing yards, 8 rushing yards per carry, 1 touchdown, and 2 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. Zach Ertz, 16 targets for 11 receptions, 104 receiving yards, 9.5 receiving yards per reception. Jalen Hurts, 20 for 28, 246 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 8.8 yards per attempt, and a 71.4 completion percentage. Saquon Barkley, 15 attempts for 118 rushing yards, 7.9 rushing yards per carry, 3 touchdowns, and 3 rushes of 10-plus yards or more. 8 targets for 6 receptions, 96 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and 16 receiving yards per reception. Now, when we look at this game, the bus in Philly, okay? I understand that this was a dynamic season for the Commanders, a season that, will definitely go down in the history books, especially here in the DMV. But at some point, this party was going to end, and it ended in Philly. Now, granted, at first, the Commanders were trying to put up a fight, but, the Eagles decided, hey, I'm going to sit up in the chair a little bit. I'm going to get a little bit serious. And they got serious. And that's exactly what happened. For all the Commanders fans that, may be doom and gloom, I wouldn't be, because why? You defied the odds this season. Nobody would have expected this team to make it this far. You guys were literally one game away from the Super Bowl. You defeated the Lions, the number one seed in the NFC. You went to Detroit and you beat them to face your division rival again in the NFC Championship. That right there is monumental. That is something that you can carry into next. When you look at this roster from top to bottom, offense to defense, special teams, whatever, nobody would have expected them to get this far. But it proves that when you have the right coaching, the right quarterback, guess what? Anything can happen. And that's exactly what it was. Now, for the Eagles, though, the Eagles showed, hey, we're still those guys. We're dominant. They got hot at the right moment because that first half of the season, it was looking real rocky, okay? You saw a lot of, conflicts on the sidelines. Then you have reports coming out that, Sirianni and Jalen Hurts aren't on the same page. And it was just a whole bunch of stuff. And then whatever happened after that bye week, from that point to now, they have been locked in, zeroed in, ready to go. And so the payoff is, guess what? They're back in the Super Bowl again. And this time, this might be the best chance for them to actually win a Super Bowl. So I say all that to say this, the Eagles, you guys have a tall task ahead of you. Now, granted, I understand there are people that are saying, well, the Eagles have a better defense than the Chiefs. That may be true by some people, but by my standards, guess what? The bus stops in Kansas City. So unless you have a master plan that nobody knows about, guess what? It's going to be a fight. From the first quarter to the last quarter, it's going to be a fight. So be prepared. You have faced these guys in the Super Bowl before. Okay, tell all your corners when the 2-minute warning happens. Guess what? Don't hold on the corners. Don't hold on the corners. If you don't hold on to the corners, guess what? You'll be perfectly fine. But if you do, guess what's going to happen? Patrick Mahomes is going to hold up another Lombardi. Just saying. But we have to talk about some Steelers stuff, unfortunately. And that is because Art Rooney had his end of the year press conference with a select few of journalists. And man, oh man, this is it's a head scratcher, folks. I don't know how to feel about it, but we're about to get into it. So buckle up, here we go. So, and I quote, "When you talk about change last year, we made significant changes on the offensive side of the ball. Brought in a new coordinator, brought in some new position coaches on the offensive side. So I would say it's not as though we haven't made any changes. I'm looking forward to the second year under Arthur Smith in terms of the offense, preferably with one of the two quarterbacks we had on the roster this year so we can continue to develop that way. I understand the frustration with how we finished 2024. It just wasn't good enough. Not what we expected, and everybody in this building knows that we have work to do, and we've got to be better than that. We've got some big decisions to make, and we're going to be rolling up our sleeves and doing the best we can to make sure we're better next year. We had a 3-game stretch where we played 3 of the best teams in the league, 2 of whom are in the Super Bowl. And we kind of saw where we are versus where they are, and we know we've got work to do to take that next step. This is not something that happens very often, but the bottom line is you don't win as many games in this league as Mike Tomlin has. He's a good coach. He's as frustrated as anybody in terms of not making that next step and knows what we need to do." End quote. Now, he also has 2 quotes about George Pickens and TJ Watt as well. So we're going to get into those right now. So this is what he says about George Pickens. And I quote, George Pickens has room to grow, and that will impact our thoughts on how we go forward with him, end quote. He also has a quote I'm getting to right now, which is, and I quote, I'd have to put in the unlikely category. He's talking about as far as TJ Watt being traded, okay? He goes on to say he's certainly been one of the real solid pieces we have on that defense. I think he's the kind of guy we want to have in the locker room going forward, end quote. Now, when we look at all these things that he has said, and there's a few other things that he also said as well, and I wasn't able to find them, but he acknowledges the frustrations that Steelers fans are having when it comes to, the playoff success, right? And I understand, everybody feels some type of way because we all want our teams to be in the playoffs, right? Nobody wants to end their season, with everybody else. Everybody wants to keep on playing and try to compete for a title. But the fact of the matter is that 5-game stretch proved everything that we needed to know, which is we're not there. We're not there by a mile, okay? When we compare ourselves to teams like the Ravens, like the Chiefs, like the Eagles, the difference with all three of them is, for one, they make changes, okay? Especially when it comes to their coaches. The Ravens just got Chuck Pagano out of retirement to come and work with him. Think about that for a second here, folks. The Ravens did that, okay? That is a major step in the right direction, okay? When we look at the Eagles, them getting Vic Fangio and then getting Kellen Moore was a breath of fresh air because now guess what? They're back in the Super Bowl, and this might be the year where they actually win it all, okay? The Steelers continue to fall on their own sword, okay? And the reason why I say that is because when you don't hit on your first round draft picks, when you don't pull the trigger on making certain major moves for the betterment of your team, guess what happens? You're put in this situation like what the Steelers are. The Steelers can only blame themselves for their past failures. They cannot blame anybody else. They have to look in the mirror and admit that, listen, we have an organizational problem. And what is that problem? We are not drafting well. We are not coaching well. We are not making proper adjustments. And we are not trying to expand ourselves and add more people to this coaching staff so we can be a better team. Instead, we want to continue to run the same system that we've been running for the longest time. And people have caught on to it. Anytime you have Julian Edelman go on his podcast and basically talk about how we were running the same system back then that we are now, that definitely says a lot, man. We all saw how this defense was when we had Brian Flores for 1 year. I understand I am continuing to beat a dead horse, but listen, this is a fact. When we made that one move for that 1 year, you saw more production out of a lot of players that we haven't seen, a whole lot of production from, just because we added Brian Flores. Just because we added somebody from the outside to give us an outside perspective on what we can do to take this team to the next. So why in the world haven't we done that now? We have to continue to stay fresh. We have to continue to keep things going. You have people like Antonio Pierce, Gerard Mayo, Mike McCarthy. You have different people, Pep Hamilton, Byron Leftwich, that you can bring in and that can help you with this team to take this team into another stratosphere. But because you live in your fears, but because you stick to traditions that at this point have not done anything for you, all it's done for you is just basically say, hey, we're going to live in the past. We're going to rely on the 6 championships that we have and forget about trying to win in the playoffs. Forget about us trying to add another Lombardi. Forget about us trying to do right for people like TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward, who are Pittsburgh Steelers through and through. Forget about all of that. Instead, we're going to stay in our own fears. And this is exactly why we will never win another championship. Because you know why? We will not make the necessary changes. We will not rip off the Band-Aid that continues to stay on halfway. That's what it is. It's not because, we don't have this player or that player. You can have all of the top players in the world. You can have Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, Jalen Ramsey, Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton. You can have all those guys on your team, but guess what? If you do not have adequate coaching, guess what? You will never win the big game. You will always lose. And that's exactly why we continue to get crushed and crumble against teams like the Eagles, like the Chiefs, because you know why? They adjust. We don't. That's my little rant for the Steelers. On to some other stuff that we have to talk about. And that is what is going on in New Orleans. Because it's a little bit weird to me that they don't have a head coach by now. And granted, I understand they're supposed to be waiting for Kellen Moore because, of course, he's the offensive coordinator with the Eagles and they're in the Super Bowl and whatnot. But, I mean, you had Mike McCarthy that you interviewed. You had a whole bunch of people that you interviewed. And you mean to tell me you wasn't interested in none of those guys? Really? Something is going on here, folks, and I don't think nobody is really talking about it. Now, granted, I understand that the Saints' job is a little bit weird. I wouldn't take it personally, but some people want to take on that challenge. But I don't think this is a challenge that nobody should take, and the reason why I say that is because you have little to work with. You don't have any cap space, and when I mean you don't have any cap space at all. You don't know what you're going to do with quarterback. There's so many question marks on this roster that it's ridiculous. Okay, you would have thought that you're playing guess who. That's how many question marks is on this team. Okay, now if I'm Kellen Moore, listen, you better have you a good bottle of scotch or rum or something by your desk, because I'm telling you, you're going to be drinking some of those nights, because man, oh man, you have little to work with, my friend. Okay, now with most head coaches, you'll be in a situation where you have a few pieces that you can, lean on. You may have a little bit of, cap flexibility. You may have a good draft pick and whatnot. They got the draft pick, but they don't got the cap space. That's not really good. But we're going to go more in depth about that when we talk about that division. We talk about the Saints. Okay, stay tuned for that. That will be coming soon, probably after the Super Bowl and the season is officially over with. But I have to talk about the Senior Bowl, okay? Have to talk about it because I've been watching it all week long, and these are my takeaways so far. There are a lot of hidden gems at corner, D-tackle, running back, and receiver, okay? There are some people that are not getting a whole lot of media attention, but I'm telling you, if you put them in the right situation, they could definitely hit. Okay? Some notable names that caught my attention: Ty Filton, Aeneas Pebbles, Tez Johnson, Gray Zabel, Quincy Riley, Darius Alexander, Ezra Thomas. Okay? Just to name a few. These guys, they're definitely going to be some difference makers in the league. Okay? Tez Johnson, cooking. From the first day to the last day, cooking, hot grease, every single day, cooking in one-on-ones, okay? Ezra Thomas, he was doing his thing. Aeneas Pebbles, I got to start watching more film of you, sir, because man, oh man, are you a wrecking ball. Same thing with Jordan Phillips as well. Gray Zabel, I was unfamiliar with your game. Quincy Riley, I was unfamiliar with your game. Darius Alexander, I definitely was unfamiliar with your game, my friend. Mike Green, he's like that. I don't care what anyone says. In my mind, Mike Green is pass rusher 1 for me. This is just me. This is just my opinion. I could be wrong. You can argue with me. I don't really care. But Mike Green is that guy. He has a lot of upside to his game. And I'm not saying he's going to be an instant, hit. But I will say this. He does have the skill set to definitely be a really good pass rusher in the league. He got the size, he got the skill, and he has the speed. He is going to be a problem. You heard it here first on the Football Junkies podcast, episode 64, Buffalo Wing Boat, okay? And the last thing is, the quarterbacks were definitely struggling. Now, I know for some people, you probably don't care about that, but for others, I would probably take heed to it because a lot of these quarterbacks were just out of it. And I think this opens up somewhat of of a deeper conversation that definitely needs to be had. I've been putting it off for the longest time, but I definitely need to say it. And that is, I think the number one problem with a lot of these quarterbacks nowadays is they're not taught to play under center. And Ben Roethlisberger said this on his podcast. Like, when he was in college, they taught him basically almost every single practice to play under center. And once he transitioned to the league, he was able to do it with little to no problems. But nowadays, what you're seeing is a lot of these quarterbacks are either playing in some variation of a pistol formation or some variation of a shotgun formation. I'm sorry, that just doesn't work. They have to be able to know and to be comfortable with playing under center. You're going to have to do it at some point in the game, because that's what a lot of the offensive coordinators and coaches do in the league. So you have to start doing that in college. Otherwise, that's going to be a major learning curve for a lot of these young quarterbacks. But out of all of these quarterbacks, I think Jalen Milroe definitely has a lot of upside to his game. I think he is somebody that is going to have to be put in a situation where he can sit and learn and probably be shown how to be a better passer, because physically, I'm not really worried about that. I know he can run. I know he can, do a whole bunch of crazy things. But it's the passing that I'm concerned about, because there's a lot of inconsistencies with his pass game that I think if it gets cleaned up, he's going to be a problem. But I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys like what you are listening, please like, share, subscribe, download the episodes, leave a 5-star review on anywhere and everywhere that you listen to the Football Junkies podcast. Okay, now for my YouTube people, okay, Football Junkies Pod, okay, Football Junkies Pod. When you go on the YouTube, we have a link tree. That link tree will take you anywhere and everywhere. By the time this episode comes out, there will be 2 mock drafts for today. And there'll probably be 2 mock drafts for tomorrow as well. Okay? For my Instagram people, Football_Junkies Pod. Okay? Football_Junkies Pod. Junkies Pod is not what? It is together, not spaced. Okay? It is together, not spaced. Follow me on Twitter, GM Kale. That is right. GM Kale, Kaile. Same thing with Blue Sky as well. For my TikTok people, Football Junkies Pod, okay? Football Junkies Pod, okay? As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you guys need. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. This is your GM, Kale, who currently is not on a team right now, but don't you worry about it. This is your GM who is going to predict all the bag alerts and all the crazy trades and truth bombs that are about to come out within the next few months. All of this and more, okay? This is your GM, Kale, signing out. Peace and love. I'm out.